Welcome to another edition of the Tom Greene Podcast. Michigan, a big victory this last week over one of our guests' teams, the Wisconsin Badgers. Of course, we're going to be talking with him about the other team that he wrote for the student newspaper for and currently still supports, and of course, currently misses being in the press box at Memorial Stadium, as well as First National Bank Arena or First Community Bank Arena, whatever it's called there in Lincoln. He is Matt Hardesty. Welcome back to the show, Matt.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be back on. I'm glad to see the podcast is still going strong. It's always a pleasure when I can be here.
Absolutely. And of course, like we'd said before, this podcast not only got me to do freelance for Essexville Garber for a year, it got me to WLEW radio for a year and a half, and now it's gotten me to the Huron Daily Tribune doing some sports writing, and I've done that now for a month, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. We're getting closer to the playoffs in the MHSAA, so there's a possibility, but not distinctly, that we might do some more with the MHSAA playoffs here. We'll see about that. But of course, as far as the Tribune goes, definitely doing games of the week and writing for there. So you have since graduated from Nebraska University, and of course you would dearly miss the fact that you weren't able to go to Dublin for a football game, but of course COVID said otherwise. Thankfully I'm fully vaccinated. But what are you doing nowadays?
Well, I'm back home in my hometown of Racine, Wisconsin. I've got a full-time job, and then I work part-time for the local newspaper, the Racine Journal-Times, also covering high school sports. So I do very much miss being in the press box and being around both college football and college basketball every day. But at the same time, I found it fairly rewarding to be covering high school sports too, and getting to tell some stories where you're not in a completely oversaturated media market like Nebraska kind of is.
Certainly. And it's this job, this career is a grind, and you got to take every step of the way you can get. So we're talking a little Michigan, Nebraska here. First, we got to talk about a little bit of Michigan, Wisconsin last week. As the Wisconsin guy that you are, I'm sure you're disappointed. What are your thoughts on that?
No, really. I wouldn't even say I'm a Nebraska fan. I'm just kind of an alumni that covered the team there, and I'm definitely not a Wisconsin fan. But I mean, living here, you follow the team pretty closely, and I thought Michigan was going to pull off the win, but I was kind of surprised that it got as ugly as it did. But at the same time, like, I've been quietly impressed with Michigan so far this year, and I was excited to see them take a step up in competition, and they look the part. I'm very excited to see what the rest of their season looks like going forward, because they've got some pieces there, all right.
They are 5-0, or yes, 5-0, and have never trailed so far.
Oh, really?
This season. It's amazing that this has continued. A lot of people, especially my drinking buddy down in Toledo, Danny Ocarafo, have really doubted them. And there are still kinks to be worked out. Don't get me wrong. The passing game is still something of complaint to the Michigan faithful. Believe me, they complain about just about everything. The pass defense has certainly been a point of complaint, and that I sympathize, because the secondary still has its issues. But so far, 5-0 and having never trailed speaks for itself. And I know that November is coming, and things are going to get rough down the road, because that happens for just about any college football team except for Alabama. Even ask Clemson right in the first game there. They played a very good defensive team in Georgia and lost 10-3. They almost lost to Georgia Tech, who lost to Northern Illinois. The transitive property much? Michigan destroyed Northern Illinois.
Yeah, Clemson's been rough this year, but I'm kind of excited. Like, so what's kind of, are people still have a little bit of last season in the back of their head, Michigan fans there, or what's the vibes, would you say, for the fan base right now? Is it starting to get a little more confident?
Honestly, that depends on where exactly in Michigan you are, and I will explain. Like here around the thumb area, there are actually more I think there are actually more state fans around here than Michigan, which is depressing. But that's
About
because
that.
it's also a farming area, which Michigan State was formerly known as
Yep.
Michigan Agricultural College. So in a way, it makes sense. But at least up here, at least my vibe is they're good. They're going to get better, but let's not consider ourselves to be in the national picture just yet. Still a little bit more we got to do. We got to beat Michigan State. We got Ohio State yet. We got to win at least one of those two, if not both. The vibe down near Toledo, where my drinking buddies are, is Michigan is world beaters. Cade McNamara is going to be a Heisman Trophy winner, and J.J. McCarthy is going to be the next coming of Cam Newton. So there are two definite different vibes around the Michigan fan base, depending on where you're at. I would think that my vibe is probably the better of the two, thinking good national picture in there, but there's still work to be done. And at least how I feel, and we'll get to this in a minute, I really do feel that this game coming up is going to be a trap game. But what are your thoughts so far on the Wolverines? And we can even transition this to the Huskers right now.
I was just going to transition this to Nebraska. I too have been very impressed with Michigan. I think, and I kind of noticed this last year when he had limited playing time, but I think Cade McNamara is probably one of the. I mean, I liked Shea Patterson. I was kind of surprised that didn't have more success, but I think a lot of that might have to do with the scheme and the coaching staff around him. But I think Cade McNamara has a huge ceiling at Michigan. I like the way he throws the ball. I'd like to see him get a little more use, but they haven't really had to use him because, again, like you said, they haven't trailed all year. So we really don't know how good he is. And I think there's more in the tank than what he's showing, which has got to be exciting. Um, but you're talking about you speak about Michigan State, and I know this is kind of hard when you're living in Michigan, and I completely understand how the people in Toledo, I'm guessing you're talking about Toledo, Ohio.
Yes.
Okay, just there's like you never know if there's a Toledo, Michigan too. But
There's a Canton, Michigan, and Canton, Ohio. So I get
gosh, of
that
course
sentiment.
there is. But I get how when you're living in the enemy territory, uh you're gonna be a little more hopeful and kind of set the bar higher, especially when you're living in Ohio and around Ohio State's program as much. But I am gonna go out on a limb here and say that Michigan's got a tougher test coming up this weekend in Nebraska than they will against Michigan State in East Lansing. I've been watching a lot of Michigan State this year. Granted, I've never been very high on Mel Tucker. I think he's a fine coordinator and he's an average coach. But I mean, I've watched them this year. I'm not a big fan of their quarterback. I like Kenneth Walker, but when you watch them play Nebraska at home in a primetime game and they don't get a first down and they get 15 yards for the entire second half, like I have my questions. And they're a fine team. They're going to make a bowl game, probably a good bowl game. I mean, they're much improved than whatever the heck they put out on the field last year. But it took the worst special teams effort. Like the Nebraska has the worst special teams in college football, and it took all of their might to give Michigan State that win with a really bad punt that was returned for a touchdown in the final minutes that sent it to overtime. So I would say that this might be a tougher test, especially being on the road for Michigan than Michigan State.
I really hope you're right in that sentiment. I've seen not quite as much Michigan State as you have this year, but I've seen the highlights, and you never know, a rivalry game in East Lansing. You have to throw out the records, throw out the statistics. It's a rivalry game. But we can go ahead and transition to Michigan, Nebraska. And like I had said, I opened up with the conversation with it. I really do feel it's a trap game because when I saw that they came out and said it's going to be at 6:30 p.m. Central, I thought, crap, they're going to screw Michigan over every single chance they can get because it's going to be a road game at night. Michigan and a lot of other teams with it have struggled at night on the road. I don't like going to Lincoln at night. The last time the Wolverines went to Lincoln at night Russell Bellamy was their primary quarterback because Denard Robinson got hurt and Devin Gardner got hurt in that game in 2012. I'm sure you remember that game too.
No, but these night games are a long time coming. I believe this is only the fourth night game of this at home of the Scott Frost era. So that's since 2018.
Yeah, and we're not going
So
to even count the Ohio State night game because, yeah, it was a
that
night
was a
game,
game
but
that was played at night. And that's
technically,
about
but it
all.
wasn't the Nebraska team that people were fearing playing at night. So I'm going to discount that, but not for, it wasn't necessarily Frost's fault because he inherited the team then. So, but continue.
Yeah, that was year two for him. And his debut was supposed to be a night kickoff against Akron, and then they had the kickoff, and then lightning struck right as the ball was kicked off, and then the game got canceled because the thunderstorm just never ended. So there was supposed to be a fifth game in there, and that kind of really threw off the whole 2018 season. But yeah, they had a night game then against Northern Illinois that they won pretty big in 2019, and then Ohio State and College Game Day came to town, and that was pretty much when everyone figured out, oh hey, Justin Fields, he's pretty good at this whole football thing. Chase Young is still the most dominant football player I've ever seen in person, and I was at the Melvin Gordon 408-yard rushing game against Nebraska in 2014. And Chase Young is still just another level. I mean, they couldn't do anything to stop him. And that's why I'm kind of excited to see. I think Aiden Hutchinson might be the best defender that Nebraska's faced since Chase Young. But it's going to be exciting just to have another night game. Nebraska had a night game last week. I actually went back. It was homecoming. Got to see some friends, had a little reunion at the Daily Nebraskan. And yeah, Nebraska hosted Northwestern, first night game in 2 years. And it was a lot of fun. And they actually, I'm sure they're going to have this on TV, but keep an eye out on it. I think they're trying to start a new tradition, kind of like Wisconsin has Jump Around and Michigan does their student section sings Mr. Brightside. Uh, at the between the third and the fourth quarters of that game last week, they completely killed all the lights, turned the whole stadium red, and then started because they've got these new LED lights. They started a light show to the tune
Oh,
of
okay.
Thunderstruck. And holy cow, I highly recommend looking up a video of it online. I believe they have like a 360 panoramic, but I've never been in an environment like that. It was nuts. And the score was like 49-7 Nebraska at the time, but everyone was still there. And it was pretty cool. Georgia and Alabama have dabbled with the red lights, but they've not quite to the sheer intensity. Oh, and there were like flames coming out in the end zone. They brought out these big torch machine things. It was like a rock show production, honestly. So I'm sure they're going to bring that back for this week. It got the crowd excited. I think they're excited to see that again this week. So they've had plenty of time without having any night games under Scott Frost to think of new things, and this seems to be the product of what that brainstorming has brought them.
So at least for my sake, let's hope that Michigan is up by 2 or 3 scores at least before they bring out the Thunderstruck, because that seems a little bit intimidating to
We'll
me.
see. I mean, yeah, they did not do that. They did the whole turn the stadium only red during the Ohio State game, but they did not they did not play Thunderstruck. I think they played some other random song. I think it was like a old school fight song or something, because it was just like that was also like a 48-7 game at the time. It was just a beatdown. But we'll
Gotcha.
see. I think it'll be I don't think it's gonna be that lopsided, but you never know. So I think it's going to be a great atmosphere, and that's just great for college football in general, and it's great for both programs to be playing in that.
Exactly. So now I should ask, after the Illinois debauchery, Nebraska has played elite. Oh, I shouldn't quite say elite football, but very close to it. Is Scott Frost the guy for the future, and how close is Nebraska to being back, per se?
Well, I definitely think that the local perception and the fan perception and even the administrative perception is that there's no other person than Scott Frost on their minds right now. I mean, I saw some of the same stuff you probably did after the Illinois game, which was an abject disaster in most facets, because that game was hyped up as one they couldn't afford to lose, and well, they lost in the same ways that they were losing games last year. But they've got a new athletic director this year. They brought back Trev Alberts, another former star from the 90s. He was a linebacker on their last team that didn't win that lost in the national championship to Florida State back in 1993. He was the athletic director at Nebraska Omaha down the road. So he's in, and he seems to be a lot more hands-on than the previous athletic director. He comes to practice more. He's more vocal, but he doesn't give as many interviews to the media, and he doesn't voice his opinions. He doesn't set win total expectations like the previous athletic director did. And then the other thing is Scott Frost, after last year, he really shook up. He didn't change any of he might have added one assistant, I think, but I think he might have added an outside linebackers coach. I don't know if that was the year before or not, but he did shake up a lot of his support staff. He's got a new director of football operations, like the CEO position. He used to be his best friend. Now it's someone else. They changed up their director of player personnel. It used to be a longtime assistant now, but he's getting up there in age. And now they've got a younger guy in, hopefully to try to work on keeping the players out of trouble, keeping them to stick around campus. And so there's been a lot of transfers here, but I mean, at the end of the day, he's got to win games. I think as long as they don't pretty much lose out, I think Scott Frost is safe at least for another year. And I think the program's trajecting upwards. I think it's a lot closer to being back than it is Scott Frost getting fired. But at the same time, we've been here for 4 years now, and we need to start seeing results. I mean, it's clear that I'm expecting a very different performance than what we saw the last time Nebraska played Michigan. That's been getting talked about a lot, about how in 2018 it was almost a safety hazard to have that game played because Michigan was that much better than Nebraska. Like, they literally pulled Adrian Martinez at halftime of that game for his own safety because his offensive line couldn't do anything to stop that Michigan defense. So I think it'll be a real telling weekend to see how much Nebraska's closed the gap. And also, it's kind of exciting, this game, because moving forward, this is going to be a yearly game. It's the cross-divisional opponents are changing up next year, and Michigan doesn't have to play Wisconsin every year anymore. And Nebraska, I'm sure much to the relief of Scott Frost, does not have to play Ohio State every year. So we're going to be getting this matchup every year. And I think, once again, that's a great thing for college football.
Exactly, and you didn't deserve to have 3 years off from this show. I'm glad I brought you in for at least one of the Michigan-Wisconsin games,
Yeah.
because Tom Greene Podcast fans need more Matt Hardesty in their lives.
Doesn't.
but yes, Scott Frost, I think, is the guy for the job. And while they're still losing right now, it looks like, this kind of sounds cut and dry, but it seems like there's a lot more winning on the horizon than there's going to be a lot more losing. The results say you guys are what, 2-3 or something like that?
3-3 now.
You guys are 3-3, but a couple of bounces here and a couple of bounces there, and you guys are 5-1 and ranked probably in the top 15 because you guys would have beaten Oklahoma and you would have beaten Michigan State, and that would have raised the eyes of a lot of people in the college football committee. So while it's 3-3, it's almost a 5-1 record. Now, of course, even Scott Frost can tell you there are no moral victories in this sport, but still, this Joel Klatt was very spot on. When this team is a lot closer than people think, and they just got to get that special teams going, and it might have to be a replacement of the special teams coordinator. That could be what happens at the end of this season. But Nebraska.
Tom, that's the thing. Nebraska, Scott Frost doesn't have a special teams coordinator. That's the most frustrating part about this all. They gave that out. Their outside linebackers coach, Mike Dawson, is also the special teams coordinator.
That
So
is something I
that has
did not
been the
know.
chagrin. That has been the chagrin of everyone in Nebraska, is that their biggest weakness is special teams. It's some of the worst in college football, and they don't have a special teams coordinator that's devoted full time to the position.
Well, I think we have realized what the problem with Nebraska football is. They need a special teams coordinator.
And not
Maybe
only
that's
that,
for,
they're under NCAA investigation because they were illegally using a special teams analyst for on-field coaching. When they have several coordinators or several assistants that have experience as special teams coordinators, they still brought in a guy from Auburn to be their special teams coordinator last year, and their special teams got worse and they're under NCAA investigation.
oh my, the problem may be a lot more complex than I once thought.
Yep.
My goodness. But yes, special teams is the problem, but even I don't know the solution because I didn't necessarily know they didn't have a full-time special teams coordinator. Big yike.
Well, last week was a step in the right direction. They only punted one time and it was an 84-yard punt. So, and they didn't miss any kicks and they didn't. The other big thing is that Nebraska, you should recognize this name. They have their number one punt returner. He's back from injury, Oliver Martin, former Michigan wide receiver a few years ago. So,
Mhm.
one of the many issues, their original punt returner, he was the one that infamously fielded that punt in the week 0 game against Illinois at the 2-yard line and then tried to throw it forward when he couldn't get out of the end zone. He muffed a couple more punts. He got benched. And then one of their wide receivers transfers from Montana, who's been pretty good for them as a wide receiver, but he got scared and quit fielding punts. And then that gave Michigan State about 100 extra yards of field position, which proved pretty costly when they lost by 3 points in overtime. So now that Oliver Martin's back, Northwestern punted a lot last week, and he caught every single punt, fair catch, no returns, and it makes a difference. So it's a step in the right direction, but against Michigan's elite special teams, it's going to be a much tougher test for that unit this week.
For sure. So I think we've nailed down one of the keys to the game, and that is special teams. Tell me, tell me more about how Nebraska can beat Michigan on Saturday night in Lincoln.
I got to show that. I mean, I'm personally of the opinion that, save for maybe CJ Stroud, and the jury is very much still out on him, I think Adrian Martinez might be the best quarterback in the Big Ten. He's certainly the best quarterback in the West. I've been watching a lot of Big Ten West football, and there's some potential there with Petrus and Graham Mertz, but Adrian Martinez, he's in his 4th year as a starter, and he's been playing better. He's really thinned down. He's been running the ball well. Another fun thing, and I think you'll get a kick out of this one too, that I think has really helped Nebraska this year, especially on offense, is they're running a little bit of option. So they're trying to bring back the option a little. It's different than before. Pretty much they're using that instead of screens. Uh, they're using wide receivers as the outside option people, and then the running backs for inside option. And then Adrian Martinez has gotten pretty good at running it. They broke an 83-yard touchdown run with the option last week, and Martinez also had a 25-yard touchdown run on just a keeper in the option. So that's been fun. And it also really helps that Nebraska, Scott Frost has really built his team into a Big Ten physicality level team. Like, they have some really large tight ends in Austin Allen and Travis Vokolek that both block extremely well. And that makes it a lot easier to run the option. And it's something that Northwestern, Pat Fitzgerald said, he's like, we prepared for this all week, but they couldn't do anything to stop it. I think Nebraska had 275 rushing yards, something like that in that game.
Wow.
So it'll be a little different against Michigan. I think Northwestern's got decent defenders, although they lost a lot of guys last year, plus their defensive coordinator retired. But I think Michigan's got a lot more athletes, especially since there's still a lot of those guys from the Don Brown era of defense, which he loved those guys. So I'm kind of curious to see if they do that. I think the other thing, besides quarterback play, I think it's going to be huge, the battle in the trenches here. I think it's a huge advantage for Michigan. Nebraska's got a, a very promising offensive line, but I mean, Michigan State sacked them 7 times. They're very young, and youth is very you don't want youth on your lines in the Big Ten, and they switched some things up. They brought in a couple different guys last week, and Martinez didn't get sacked in the game, but again, they're going to have to deal with Aiden Hutchinson and a lot of those other guys on the defensive line this week, and I think that's going to be big. And on the other side, I'm kind of curious to see how Michigan's offensive line holds up and how they run the ball against Nebraska. Nebraska's had a very good defense this year, which is not something people expected in the Scott Frost era, but their defense has kind of been their identity so far this year. So that's going to be exciting. And then the last thing, I think whoever wins the turnover battle is going to win this game. I mean, we haven't seen Michigan really turn the ball over much besides a couple fumbles. JJ McCarthy, I mean, Nebraska's got an experienced secondary. Like there's 2 6-year seniors back there, but they've been burned a lot this year. Spencer Rattler didn't have any turnovers against Nebraska. It'll be interesting to see and if there's any special teams turnovers, muff punts, things like that. I think that's going to probably determine the game. So pretty much trenches, turnovers, and quarterback play.
Gotcha. Yes, special teams is going to be huge in this game. If somehow Nebraska can clean that up, and I highly doubt they can, that can be a big part of Nebraska beating Michigan on Saturday night. And they got to find a way to pass the ball because yes, they're becoming an option team, and I'm sure everybody's seen The Grinch where the Grinch just smiles ear to ear. That's how I'm feeling about the option, because if I were a high school or college coach, that's the offense I would run, would be the triple option. So they got to find a way to pass the ball because Michigan's pass defense is still a huge question mark, in my opinion. And then as far as, the defense has got to create turnovers. Michigan has still not turned the ball over. Well, maybe on a fumble or two. They haven't turned the ball over in times that mattered, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's going to be huge if that happens in Lincoln, especially. That's going to fire up that crowd on Saturday night.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the Big Reds. They're going to be fired up. The Cornhusker, I can see him throwing cooked corn on the cob with butter and salt on it and into the audience so that they can just eat some corn on the cob right then and there.
Actually, the big thing in Nebraska is they've got this guy. He's got this massive gun that shoots out hot dogs. It's called like the Wiener Schlinger or something. And he just walks around the football field, kind of on the concourse area behind the sidelines, just firing hot dogs into the stand all game. But also, I should mention, besides that interesting fact, Nebraska's actually got a decent passing. This is by far the best group of wide receivers Scott Frost has had in his time at Nebraska. And Martinez has been throwing the ball well. They got a transfer, Samari Toure from Montana, who took the place of Wan'Dale Robinson when he left for Kentucky. And he's been very good for them. He's been a deep threat. He had a 70-yard catch on the first play from scrimmage last week. And then they've got a local product, Xavier Betts, who's the one that scored on that big option run. But he had a big catch in the Oklahoma game that went for about 70 yards that really kept him in the game when they fell behind. And then they've also got Oliver Martin, the former Michigan and Iowa player, and plus 2 very large tight ends that have been big in the passing game. So I think the passing game has been a lot better and plus they've got this JUCO guy who's the #1 JUCO wide receiver, Omar Manning, who he missed all of last year struggling with some severe mental health issues, but it seems like he's worked through it all this year, and he caught a touchdown in the Oklahoma game, but he's kind of like their sleeping giant because he is literally a giant, and he's got an NFL size receiver or body, but it's just hasn't really had that many balls thrown his way yet. So I'm curious to see if they've been saving some wrinkles or plays for him in this upcoming game. So they've got a stable of wide receivers. It's more the running backs, honestly, for Nebraska. The running game, that's kind of why they've been going to the option more, is because with this young offensive line, they have not been able to run between the tackles hardly at all. Their running game's now pretty much the option, and Adrian Martinez keepers or scrambles. So, but they found this real interesting guy. His name's Jaquez Yan. He was a walk-on. He was their fourth string running back. He played for the first time in meaningful minutes this week. He had a good spring, but then he left spring camp weighing 230 pounds and returned back weighing 258. So Scott Frost didn't want to play him until he lost all that weight again, which is now. So I think he might be their best running back, and it'll be interesting to see if he gets as much use this week as he did last week.
Where is he
So,
from?
Florida.
Probably all those Jack in the Box burgers and all of that might have been the reason why he gained all
Oh
that
yeah,
weight. I mean, it's good. I mean, I got some
he's a
quarantine weight
big
on me
boy.
too.
Like
So I got
he
some
is a
quarantine.
big boy. I'm fascinated to see if he gets more run against Michigan or if that was just a one-time thing. They really usually just play the running backs that practice the best, which changes week to week here. So it'll be interesting.
I mean, I put
But
on a
the
little
running game
quarantine.
is definitely the weakest link of Nebraska's offense because of the offensive line.
Yep, I put on some quarantine weight too, so don't be ashamed.
Same.
Anybody out there that's put on some of that. So anyway, we did talk about a little keys to the game there. And my last one is going to be turnover game, like always.
Oh
Turnovers are
yeah.
great at Arby's, but not on the field. I'll always know that whenever you go to a football game. So who's going to come out on top Saturday night?
I've been thinking I felt like after the Oklahoma game, it just felt like this wasn't the moment for Nebraska football to really have that moment of like, hey, we can do this. I honestly, and it's been pretty confident almost like it. Everyone's at least expecting a close game. It's hard for me to get out what happened in 2018 out of my mind, and I know Harbaugh definitely. Oh, Harbaugh definitely takes this game seriously, given all the history between Nebraska and Michigan and between him and Scott Frost. But I do think that this is, especially at home at night, there's not as much pressure as there was in the Ohio State game. And they're not, no offense, they're not playing Justin Fields and Chase Young in this game, along with the like 8 or 9 other NFL draft picks in that game. I do think that the Nebraska is going to get a fairly huge win in this game at 24-21 probably. I think it's going to be low scoring. It's going to be a very fun, very enjoyable, and very quick pace. Like it's this game's going to go by like nothing. That's the way I feel like both of these teams play. They're going to run a lot of clock. They're going to be very low possessions. So I think Nebraska's going to get a win. 24-21 is my pick now, but I won't be surprised if Michigan makes a big statement and is better than people think. Even at 5-0 and in the top 10, they could come in and win by 10 or 20 points, and it wouldn't completely shock me. But I think Nebraska's got the bodies, the athleticism, and honestly the confidence to win this game.
Like I'd said in the start, I thought this was going to be a trap game, and I'm going to predict it as if it's going to be a trap game. 24-21. That is a pretty good score. I'm going to differentiate just a little bit and say 31-24. I think Nebraska pulls off a last second touchdown.
That'd be
And
a first.
yeah, and I don't know. I hope Michigan proves me wrong, but because it's a trap game, it's at Nebraska, it's at night. A lot of Nebraska fans are thinking about 2018. I'm actually thinking about 2012 or 2013 when
Like
Russell
that's
Bellamy had to come into the game, and that was just game over. Good night, Irene, for the Michigan Wolverines.
I mean, the Cade McNamara and JJ McCarthy are definitely no Bellamy, but I will say that that is the last time that Michigan played at Nebraska was 2012. It's kind of ridiculous to think about, but that's just kind of the way the Big Ten schedules worked out since they added Rutgers and Maryland and switched up the divisions. So it's exciting that this is going to be a yearly thing because these are two very similar and very passionate fan bases, and it's always fun for the Nebraska fans to go to Michigan. And I hope that the Michigan fans that make the trip out to Lincoln this weekend have a good time. And they're usually pretty hospitable out there. I highly recommend making the trip sometime if you can. It's a fun place to watch a college football game, just like the Big House.
Gotcha. And I do remember the that Michigan had a long time where they did not go to Camp Randall Stadium. It was from like 2006 to 2015 or something like that. A bit ridiculous, kind of like this one, Michigan and Nebraska.
Worst part about these large conferences is when you only get to see some matchups like once every 9 years.
Mm-hmm. So, real quick before we get to our pick'ems, any thoughts on Lions Vikings or at all? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit it. I support the Bears here in Wisconsin. It's one of my big character flaws is being a Bears fan.
He's
Although
still
Justin
alive,
Fields,
folks. He is still alive in the state of Wisconsin. Praise the
I had a
Lord.
rough childhood. I was bullied a lot for that. But so I've been watching a good chunk, especially also with NFL Sunday Ticket. I've watched a good chunk of the Lions games, and I've honestly thought they'd win. I thought, yeah, I guess I didn't think they'd win this last week against Chicago, but I thought they were going to beat Baltimore. I took their money line on. I thought they were going to do pretty well against Green Bay. I was impressed with how they came back against San Francisco. I like Dan Campbell. I really hope that works out because he seems like a fun, charismatic guy that makes the Lions a lot more fun than, no offense, like Jim Caldwell ever did. So I like Jared Goff. I don't quite know if he's still like starting QB level, but I mean DeAndre Swift, he's good. I mean, loved Quintez Cephas at Wisconsin. I thought he was a very underrated piece to their offense. And honestly, with the Vikings, I cannot figure them out for the life of me. I mean, last week they were just terrible against the Browns, which the Browns have an underrated defense, but I just going from how they played at home against Seattle to how they played in that game, they've made no sense this year, which I guess is kind of the Vikings under Kirk Cousins and Mike Zimmer. So I can't quit the Lions. I honestly think they'll probably pull the upset in this one, even though I fully expect to be wrong.
Gotcha. Yes, I think Dan Campbell is the guy, and I think this rebuild is different from other Lions rebuilds, where it actually feels like the front office and the coaching know what they're doing, and Dan Campbell is not completely freaking the hell out every single game like other coaches did. Sometimes it brought up some of the worst in Jim Caldwell too, believe it or not, when he was there. But it seems like this team is going in the right direction. But be advised, there are going to be a lot of losses before a lot of wins come their way. And let's see how patient the Fords I should say Sheila Fordham and or the Lions fan base are with that. As far as how
they give them some time.
Yeah. As far as this game goes, I hate to say it, but I don't know if I see a win on their schedule this year. I'm just going to keep predicting them to lose until they win. And each game from here on out is going to be a prove me wrong game. Vikings 24, Lions 17. Dan Campbell, if you're listening to this, I hope you enjoy your venti shots. I might need one of them because I need your enthusiasm right now about this team. Prove me wrong, Lions.
Yeah, really. I can't get a good feel for. I mean, the Lions have played well, and that's still incredible how they lost that game to the Ravens. That was brutal, and honestly, kind of again, there was a delay of game there, like clearly blatantly missed. I'll be the first to say it. So like, and they played a really tough schedule. I I just don't know. The Vikings, who knows? They could be good enough to make a wild card spot, or they could honestly be worse than the Lions. And I'm still trying to figure it out. But I think, especially with a guy with as much energy as Dan Campbell, maybe they just need to get one of these wins or these games with these bounces to go their way and things start looking up a little. So that could be this weekend. The Vikings have lost to worse teams than the Lions, I think. So we'll see, but I'll be watching probably unless it's another 14-7 snoozer that never makes NFL red zone. Then in that case, I will not be watching.
Sure. My one thought on the delay of game penalty was, yes, it was a delay of game, but Murphy's Law tells me that Lamar would have then proceeded to throw about a 20-yard pass, which would have made the field goal even shorter. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
kind of how
fair.
I feel about it.
I like your outlook there. That's probably right, especially knowing the Ravens.
Mm-hmm. Moving to our pick'ems, we got 9 of them for this week. Just like a couple times you come on, same thing. You tell me who wins, you tell me why. I tell you who wins, I tell you why. Life is good. We're on our merry way. So, first one, we got the Red River rivalry at the Texas State Fair. I could use a corn dog right now as we speak. Oklahoma and Texas. Who you got?
Texas is another team that I can't quite figure out how good they are, and Oklahoma. I mean, I thought it was. I mean, people call me crazy beforehand, and I don't pride myself on predictions, but one that I kind of saw coming was I didn't think Oklahoma was gonna cover against Nebraska, and I've never been that big of a Spencer Rattler believer, but at the same time, I mean, I think Oklahoma's gonna win. It'd be cool if Texas won, but I still am. I love Bijan Robinson. I'm going with the safer pick in Oklahoma, especially if it's just straight up. I mean, Texas may cover whatever that spread is, but I think Oklahoma's going to win, especially with that
Yes,
defense.
sure. As far as this one goes, I think I like the direction that Steve Sarkisian is taking with this Texas team, but I still think they're a year or two away. So sorry, Texas, but you're not back yet. I absolutely hate that Oklahoma has won just about every year in the Big 12, and I wish something would happen about that. They're going to the SEC in a few years, I guess, thank God. But I think Oklahoma is going to win this game by 10. I think it's going to be an interesting game, and I think Oklahoma pulls away at the end. The surprise Arkansas team under Sam Pittman against the Fighting Popcorn Lane Kiffins of Ole Miss.
Oh gosh. I mean, one of my favorite things is I love to pick against any team that just played Alabama or any team that just played Georgia. So it's like I'm kind of fascinated to see how two just decimated teams match up against each other in this one. And I mean, yeah, I this is another one I kind of when I saw that this game was on the list, it's like, oh gosh, this is one that I was just gonna stay away from. But if I have to pick someone, I'm gonna go with Ole Miss just because they've got the best player on the field in Matt Corral. And I mean, not the biggest Lane Kiffin fan, but I enjoy watching Ole Miss. I expected more out of them last week. I honestly thought they'd put up a better fight against Alabama, but when you don't convert on fourth down, that's what happens.
When you play in Tuscaloosa, that's also what happens if you're
Yeah,
not named Alabama. As far as this game goes, Sam Pittman's a good coach. Arkansas is a good team. I think, though, they are vastly overrated, and that is because they are in the SEC. Did anybody else see them get shut out by Georgia like I did? I
that was
think,
rough.
yeah, there. I
I
think a
saw
point
that.
is to be made there that I'm not sure if Arkansas should be ranked just yet. What I love the pettiness of Ole Miss, especially. I think we all remember Labor Day going into the game against Louisville. I think we all saw that Twitter video. I love Louisville, Mississippi. That is the level of pettiness I am here for. And that is exactly why I am picking Ole Miss to win by 24. I think Ole Miss is going to dominate Arkansas, and Arkansas is going to go on ring. But like I said, Sam Pittman is a better coach than people think. And Arkansas would be a very good Big 10 or Big 12 team. Yes, I said Big 10 because the West Division is wide open. Let's be honest here. They'll be a very good Big 10 or Big 12 team, not SEC. Give me Ole Miss by 24. Another SEC matchup, Georgia and Auburn.
Oh man, I it's Georgia. I mean, I'm gonna get suckered into thinking that Georgia's good enough to beat Alabama this year again. I'm still not sure about their offense. I can't get the 10-3 game out of my head. Like, yeah, it was impressive what they did, but I mean, not scoring a touchdown against Clemson. Yeah, no, I think Georgia's a Death Star level team, almost as good as Alabama. Last year they went through a little bit of a rebuilding hiccup year. Uh, first year post Jake Fromm and all that. I mean, that defense is just, I mean, it might be one of the best defenses we've seen in college football in a long, long time. And I mean, I'd like to think that maybe someone else in the East, like I think Kentucky's got a very good team in the East but it's hard to see anyone else beating them until Alabama. So I'm going Georgia probably fairly big, but I mean, good for Auburn getting that win at LSU. Brian Harson's surprised me. I wasn't big on that hire, and I think they've benefited from a fairly weak schedule, but I think Georgia's going to win pretty big, probably like 31-0, something like that. They're just so good.
Bo Nix is the definition of that TikTok meme that I think we all saw.
Oh yeah. The
He
kombucha
showed
girl
that
for
at LSU, especially because every time you just can't trust Bo Nix. He makes this crazy throw on third down to convert or for a touchdown, and it's literally the TikTok meme. But when it comes to the Georgia defense, what a lot of people do not know is that when the TikTok meme goes, it also goes. And apologies
yeah,
to all the podcast listeners on the audio side, but if you just look up TikTok meme coffee or whatever it is, you'll know what I mean.
kombucha, I think.
Yeah,
It's the girl
kombucha.
who tastes it and it's like nasty at first, and then she's like,
Yeah.
pretty good.
But then she makes a sort of nasty face right after that that most people do not see. That's what's going to happen this week for Bo Nix and Auburn as they face the Georgia defense. You got to love when the Tom Greene podcast brings up pettiness and memes, but that's where we're at the end of the segment of this show, and we're all
keep coming back.
And we're all here for it. Georgia 31, Auburn 17.
17, wow, bold pick there.
Penn State and Iowa, top 10 matchup at Kinnick Stadium.
Oh, this is going to be fun. So this is a weird one because honestly, I know Graham Mertz is getting a lot of flack this year, but arguably the two quarterbacks that I trust the least in the Big Ten are Spencer Petras and Sean Clifford. And I know Clifford had a really good game against Auburn this year, but I mean, I think I was kind of surprised they let Will Levis go. I thought he was better than them last year, even though Iowa demolished Penn State when Will Levis started against them. But this is going to be a fun game. I mean, Kinnick Stadium is it's finally starting to get the respect it deserves for being one of the toughest places to play a college football game. But at the same time, Penn State, I think, is the better team. I like Iowa's defense, but I do not trust Spencer Petras in a big game. I think they kind of benefited from Maryland just completely imploding on themselves with all those turnovers. And then not even did they have 5 touchdowns on 150 yards in the first half last week, but about 50 of those yards were from penalties, honestly. So I do not trust the Iowa offense. I like their defense, but I think Penn State's defense is going to get the job done. And I mean, Penn State, I don't think they've lost in Kinnick since they switched to the cross-divisional format where they play every year. And you want to talk about Nebraska being relieved not to have to play Ohio State every year. They still have to play Michigan. Iowa gets to replace Penn State with Rutgers going forward, which, that's not as easy as it once was. But Rutgers is still, I'd definitely take them over playing Penn State or Ohio State or Michigan every year. So, give me Penn State in a very close game. Maybe I wouldn't be mad if it was another one of those where they score on the last play of the game, like that awesome 2017 game at Kinnick.
Gotcha. Yeah, this one's tough for me. If it were at Penn State, I would pick Penn State by 21. But because it's at Kinnick Stadium, for the toughest place to play in college football, I would say maybe besides Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. This is the first time Iowa's going to be put on the national stage. Give me Iowa by a field goal. That's where we're gonna be contrarian there. Give me Iowa by a field goal, but I've been wrong before on that one, as Penn State has won each time in Kinnick for the past few seasons for sure. Moving to
Yeah,
the NFL, we got Rams in Seattle.
ooh, man, you pick some hard games. These are all the toss-ups. My gosh. I
Pick 'em,
respect the
all the toss-ups.
I know I respect the move there. You really made me do my homework on this one. I'm not as like surefire that Matt Stafford's going to be the big difference maker for the Rams, but I haven't understood Seattle for years now. Um, I'm going to take it's in Seattle.
Yes.
Oh gosh. Um, yeah, yeah, I'll take the Rams. I'm still not keen on Seattle yet. I trust the Rams a little more still, but I'm not confident in that.
I have thought about this since Pete Carroll became the head coach. Every time the Seahawks play at home at night, they are dominant. I will take the Seahawks here once again. Give me the 2.5 points as well in that one. But that one, it's tough to pick. As you know, you come on the Tom Greene podcast, you do the pick'ems. It's every toss up in the book. You better expect, and it's tough. Tom Greene tough. That is for sure. Denver and Pittsburgh, two teams that are still trying to find themselves for sure.
I'll take Denver. I'm just although I guess maybe if it's Dwayne Haskins for the Steelers, then that might give them a chance. Oh gosh, I forgot it. Uh, what's his face on Denver this week? Uh, because Bridgewater playing? Or are they not said?
I am not entirely sure on that. I would assume
I
not.
still I like Denver's defense. I mean, wouldn't surprise me if Dwayne Haskins came into this game and played well for the Steelers. Maybe he's kind of gotten his stuff together and matured in Pittsburgh. That seems like as good a place as any to grow up in a stable organization like that. But I like Denver. I like Vic Fangio. I like a lot of those receivers. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with I like Noah Fant. Yeah, I'll take the Broncos. That's one of the more confident picks I have.
Pittsburgh is a big question mark to me. It's at Heinz Field, so it's making me want to take Pittsburgh, but I'm actually going to take Denver in this one because I think the Broncos are more pissed off because of the decision that John Harbaugh made to run Lamar Jackson in the last play of the game to reserve the rushing streak. I think Denver is going to come out and maybe even kick some tail. 24-14, Denver wins this game. New Orleans and the Washington football team.
What a weird game. I mean, just two very inconsistent teams. And the weirdest thing is I actually really like both quarterbacks. Taylor Heineke's been growing on me. He was awesome down the stretch he was awesome down the stretch in Atlanta this last weekend. I liked what I saw to him in that Thursday night game against the Giants. New Orleans, I thought that Jameis honestly was good enough to make them the NFC favorites. They were kind of my sleeper team, and they still could very well end up being the best team. I mean, you don't want to be peaking in early October. I was very surprised that they lost to the Giants in their first home game last week. But I mean, that Washington defense is still kind of figuring itself out. I'm gonna take the Saints in this one. But it should be a good game.
Yeah, Washington's defense is still a question mark. It should be a lot better than it is right now, but we shall see as time goes on. I like the Saints here too. Jameis is still up and down, but the Saints, I think,
Jameis.
are just that much better than
Yeah.
Washington here. A game that used to be featuring cellar dwellers is now featuring two teams that could be in the playoffs come January: Cleveland and the Chargers.
This is gonna be a fun game. I'm looking forward to this. I've been I very much have enjoyed watching both the Chargers and the Raiders. I was kind of surprised that they struggled as much. I like Brandon Staley out in LA. I think they're kind of benefiting from that new the new stadium there. But I mean, Cleveland's just, my gosh, they're really figuring things out. That O line's getting better. Baker's managed. He's serviceable. I I mean, Cleveland, I I think they could win like 13, 14 games this year. So I'm gonna take the Browns in this one. Is it in Cleveland?
It is at SoFi.
Oh, at SoFi? Yeah, give me Baker and under the bright lights, although that's gonna be, I mean, they always say that's a fast turf. I'm expecting some a very fun game there. But I'll take the Browns. I like them.
The Browns were a little sloppy last week in Minnesota, but so were the Vikings. This could be the game where they bounce back. The Chargers look good, but Cleveland's defense, they still got Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. Yeah, I like the Browns in this one and the points 24-17. Give me the Browns over the Chargers. Last one, Sunday night, or as they say on PTI, last one. And the mail time. Buffalo and Kansas City, the rematch of the AFC title game last year.
I'm probably gonna be the idiot for saying this, but I in Kansas City.
Yes, in KC.
Yeah, I'm still going to take Buffalo. The Bills are awesome. I love Josh Allen, love Stephon Diggs. That's such a good fit up there. That's another one of those trades where the we don't talk enough about how that Stephon Diggs trade worked out so well with Diggs going to the Bills and the Vikings getting a draft pick that they used on Justin Jefferson. Like that's just a win-win for the NFL in general. But I like the Bills in this one. I mean, I'm not low on Kansas City, and this is honestly it's kind of weird to say this, but it's kind of one that Kansas City needs if they want to win the division, maybe. Like they can't be losing many out of division games in case like they could lose to anyone in that division this year. But the Bills have been awesome. They're the only team that's really been just dominating on a week in, week out basis after week one. So I'm gonna take them in this one.
I'm going to go contrarian here, but here's my reasoning. Kansas City is riding the high from the win at Philly.
Yep.
Facing this Buffalo team. I think Kansas City wins this game, but get this. I think Buffalo gets the 1 seed in the AFC, faces the Chiefs in the AFC title game, and will beat them in the revenge game. So I think I'm going to pick Kansas City as a setup for the revenge game in January. Give me the Chiefs 24-21. Excuse me, 34-31. Higher scoring because it's the Chiefs.
Yes.
So
and the Bills. No, I completely agree with that. I could very much see that happening where the Bills are the 1 seed and beat Kansas City in January.
Certainly. So with that all said, great pick'ems, great analysis. Is there anything else you have to add to this wonderful Tom Greene podcast?
It's just great being back on. I appreciate you having me on, even though I'm not in Nebraska anymore. I still follow the team weekly, keep up with all it, watch the press conferences, all that, and got way too many friends still working out there in the media, grinding away. But I'm just excited for this game. This is probably it's the first big game atmosphere that they've felt out there since the Ohio State game, and this one feels a little more realistic for like it might actually be a good game. I'm excited to see what kind of stops they pull out. Wouldn't surprise me even if they might sneak out some alternate uniforms that are either black or white. I'm not sure yet. I've been kind of wondering if they're going to do that all year, but I think it's going to be a cool atmosphere, and I hope ABC and ESPN do it justice. And I hope fans and Michigan fans and everyone just enjoys watching this game because I think it's a great pairing for college football that we're going to be getting this every year moving forward.
Certainly excited for it. He is Matt Hardesty, and this has been the Tom Greene Podcast.
Right.